time to help young up-and-coming professionals find their way through this crazy maze called the New York PR community. My dad advanced his career pretty quickly. UP at United Press before it was UPI, coming out of the Army, NW Air, where he was hired by a young account supervisor named William Sapphire. Yes, D. William Sapphire. And the first woman my father hired as an account executive was a young lady you might have heard of, Barbara Walters. From there, he spent more than a decade heading the Roland Company's New York office, then president of Hershey, Rotman and Druck, now part of Ruder Finn, and of Marston's corporate division. But the award is not really about him. It was established in his memory 24 years ago to encourage all of you, whether you're 25 or 75, to reach out to that next generation and help them find their way in this exciting, challenging, rewarding, difficult business where who you know helps almost sometimes as much as what you know. And it's really to honor terrific, relentless PRSA pros and mentors like Shelley, who have mentored, she has mentored zillions of New York PR folk along the way. And she says, as I quote, "I will mentor anyone who shows promise, tries hard, and reads the newspaper. I hope NewYorkTimes.com counts, because otherwise she'll have a lot less mentoring to do, sadly, very soon." She's been teaching young folks PR at Baruch and NYU since 2006, founded the PR Museum, which, who'd have thunk it, thousands of young people come to understand what it is you crazy people do, and I did for 20 years at Dorf and Stanton, a terrific agency co-founded with her husband Barry, focused on defense, tech, and corporate stuff. And when she's not running her agency, she's mentoring, lecturing, and occasionally relaxing with a cocktail with Barry and her two terrific children who are here tonight. My dad pushed many of the best and brightest young folks to Dorf and Stanton, where I hired him. It was a great sort of free recruiting service, but mostly he tried to help people help themselves. Leading them to a job or a networking opportunity, editing their resumes, pulling the typos and grammaticals out of their cover letters, and giving them the encouragement, the introductions, and so forth, just as Shelley has done so marvelously for more years than I am allowed to acknowledge. And so it's great to be here, and Shelley, congratulations. Great.
Thanks, Bob. We're grateful for your father's legacy and the support your family has given to PRSA as we seek to honor the outstanding mentors in our community. On behalf of the Public Relations Society of America of New York, the Honors and Awards Committee, I'm pleased to present the 2018 Philip Dorf Award for Mentoring to Shelley Spector. As you heard from Bob, Shelley is the president of Spector & Associates, an award-winning public relations consultancy, and also the founder of the PR Museum, which she and her husband Barry established in 1991. The PR Museum is the world's first and only archive documenting the field's history, as well as how the practice itself has impacted business, communications, and social movements across the world. As the museum's passionate and spirited volunteer leader, Shelley is an active and tireless advocate for the study of public relations history, its leaders, and the significance of our practice. In addition to employing dozens of young professionals and interns at her firm, Shelley has given lectures at the museum to more than 2,000 students, scholars, and professionals. Her educational postings on social media channels have extended the museum's international reach to more than 8,800 students, scholars, and professionals in nearly 70 countries. As a published author, Shelley is passionate about bringing diversity to our profession and is currently collaborating with the Public Relations Society of America Foundation on a new book about the under-celebrated minority leaders in our industry. Through this effort, she hopes to inspire a more diverse population of students and professionals to join the public relations field. Shelley, thank you for making our committee's job easy. Your commitment, passion, and dedication to mentoring others have made you the clear winner for the PRSA New York's 2018 Philip Dorf Award. We are grateful for your dedicated service to our profession, to students of all ages, and a promise for a more diverse future. Please join Bob and I in collecting this award and celebration.
Now there's just one more, don't go anywhere. There is a corollary award in light of Shelley's years of service and dedication to the hamsters of the world, the Bob Dorf Award, sub-award to the Philip Dorf Award, the chocolate hamster of the year.
Thank you so
Congratulations
much.
again.
What's funny is that Bob and I have not seen each other literally for 40 years. Until tonight.
I wasn't allowed to use that number.
I know. I want to thank you, Grace, for your very kind introduction, and Bob for continuing to encourage mentorship and honor your dad, who was a legendary mentor himself. Many of us in the room remember Phil Dorf. How many of you remember Phil Dorf? Just a couple, you know. I guess we're getting older, Mike. Hate to admit it. And special thanks to the chapter for selecting me for this award. It's truly one of the highest honors of my life. Tonight I'm going to share some perspectives about mentoring based on my years teaching, running a museum, and now book publishing. As some of you know in this room, I spent the better part of the spring interviewing some of the foremost leaders in the industry, like Mike Fernandez, Patrice Tanaka, Catherine Blades, and of course, Mike Paul. It's for a book I'm working on with the foundation called Diverse Voices, Profiles in Leadership. We plan on publishing it in time for the international conference in October, God willing, Tony. The number one factor these leaders cite for their success is finding mentors, champions, and role models early on in their careers. Now, fortunately for young people today, there are more role models of every gender, background, or color than at any time in PR history. And there are more opportunities to connect with them than ever before, like the chapter's recent diversity mixer led by Helen Shelton at Reuter Finn, and Paige's Leaders of Tomorrow panels that was inspired by Roger Bolton. But this was not the case when I first started out. Women leaders of the time, like Barbara Hunter, Muriel Fox, Jean Schoonover, right, Patrice, were few and far between. Then one day, in the late 80s, I was invited to give a talk at AT&T. There I met a woman, some of you may remember, and I hope you do, who forever changed my life, Marilyn Laurie, the highest ranking PR woman then in corporate America. But as high up as Marilyn was at AT&T, she was also disarmingly down to earth, never veering far from her very humble New York beginnings, which were actually just like my own. In fact, she sounded just like my Aunt Harriet, who herself was raised in the same Bronx neighborhood as Marilyn. But instead of having conversations about blintzes and gefilte fish, as I would have with Aunt Harriet, Marilyn and I would talk about big ideas for Bell Labs, building awareness for wireless, and launching the World Wide Web. I know I'm dating myself. So inside the mahogany boardrooms of Midwestern white men, Marilyn would wow her audiences with the brilliance of her ideas and win their respect because she was not afraid to bring her whole self to work. She became my role model, champion, and mentor, and we worked together for the next 18 years. Now fast forward to July 2016. Inez Kaiser had died. How many of you in the room have ever heard of Inez Kaiser? Inez was the first black woman to open a PR firm, which she did in, of all places, Kansas City, Kansas, in 1957. In fact, she was one of the most inspiring people ever to work in this industry. But tragically, most people only found out about her life on the day we announced the news of her death. So right after we posted the obit, from the journal no less, I got a note from a student. "How come we never read about Inez in school?" she asked. "How come we never learned about people who look like us?" Well, she was right. There were no people who looked like her in the textbooks, despite the fact that there had been dozens of women and people of color who owned agencies, worked in government, and held corporate PR jobs since the 1930s. So we started working with authors to make sure they tell a history that includes women in order for people of color so that young people can feel a greater connection to this field. We started holding Black and Latino PR history events so our diverse students can discover a heritage they never knew existed. Last February, in fact, we had Ken Morris, the great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass, as our keynote for our third Black PR History celebration. We're also working with Paige to introduce the many leaders of tomorrow to role models of today, people like Terry Edmonds, the first Black speechwriter ever to be hired by the White House. So as organizations like PRSA and Paige put diversity front and center, we should collectively help young professionals find and connect with role models they admire and whom they can learn from. We need to help them find their own Marilyn Lorries and Inez Kaisers. Only then, I believe, can they start to feel a sense of belonging and see themselves in this field for the rest of their careers. I have no doubt that these amazing young talents that I meet all the time will be making history of their own one day and become extraordinary mentors to the next generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelley. Very inspiring. Now I'd like to invite Bill Desher to the podium and Noreen O'Carter to present the 2018 John W. Hill Award.
Well, before I introduce the John W. Hill Award, I'd be remiss if I didn't say congratulations to Shelley Spector, who just gave you a valedictory address like no other that has ever been given at a Big Apple gala. And whatever she said, I support 150%. And she didn't check the speech with me either, but anyhow. One of the 15 under 35 winners said, as she walked by this microphone,